This is The Edge with Mark Thompson.
Well, hello. Thank you for being here. I always thank you because I know that the landscape of podcasts is more crowded every hour. And so those of you who have remained loyal and stayed with us, and those of you who have shared, those of you who have left us 5-star reviews and nice words on iTunes and elsewhere, thank you. We'll be going up to Spotify soon. Somebody sent me a note saying, Mark, get the podcast up to Spotify. So we are doing that. By the way, if you want to reach us, you can do it at edgewithmarkthompson@gmail.com. edgewithmarkthompson@gmail.com. And, of course, you know all the ways on the website you can support us. I know there's some controversy about Amazon. We're not telling you to shop Amazon necessarily, but if you're going to shop Amazon anyway, then please do it through our website, edge-show.com. They spin us off a little piece of whatever you spend. And, again, it's a way to support the show without having to actually stick your hand in your pocket and part with any money. If you want to do that, there's a PayPal link on our website, edge-show.com. That's our virtual tip jar. Like a hearty Thanksgiving meal, this episode might best be appreciated in chunks. There is a lot here. But if you're going somewhere and you're caught in traffic or wherever you're managing it, doing your holiday workout, whatever, there is plenty of different sorts of conversation and stories included. It's a fun group. First, our regular J. Elvis Weinstein and I talk about my recent trip just concluded to Morocco, and we also get into some other stuff. Then Richard Greene, the Civics Dean, stops through to talk politics. Michael Shore couldn't be with us this week, so Richard steps up. He is a political strategist. He is a progressive, but he speaks in a very unvarnished way about the state of politics and what should drive people to the ballot box. We talk about messaging in the political process, and so that's our visit with Richard Greene, the Civics Dean. It runs about a half hour. And by the way, you know, on our episode descriptions, many of them have time code there, so you can go to something in an episode that you specifically want to hear. So if you're more into politics, you can go right to that. If you're not so much into politics, then you can go to other conversations. That's usually listed with a reference to time code, to where it is in the episode description. So after Richard Greene, the Civics Dean, we welcome two friends, again, this Thanksgiving week when friends and family are being welcomed. One of them is from New England and the other's from the Midwest. They're both comedians and they are both writers and producers. John Ross has been on the show before. He's a comic who moved his family to New England to raise his child, and he then became a rural postal carrier. And he describes that, if you haven't heard the story, it didn't work out well. And it didn't work out for a very long time either. Our other friend is comedian Tim Bedore, who moved to Minneapolis to raise his daughter. We'll talk to both of them about leaving the belly of the beast in L.A. and moving to the Midwest and New England. And then finally, our old friend, celebrity builder, the contractor to the stars, Scott Harris, comes through. He's built a bunch of the Michael Mina restaurants. He has built high-end properties. He's built modest properties. He's done the Ed Begley estate, which is built in a super sustainable way. We'll touch on all of these things as Scott Harris joins us for the last segment of this episode. Again, thanks for all the ways you support us. Skip around, go to other episodes, whatever you want. We love having you on the platform. I love saying the platform. It just sounds so, rather than just saying here. I like to refer to it as the platform. Let's get started.
This is The Edge.
The advantage, it means.
Hey, look, I just spit on me for no reason.
That's horrible.
Is there some comfort in uncertainty, do you think?
You're a degenerate.
Because Australian Shepherds need action.
Wow. Yeah.
This is The Edge.
That's a self-loathing term that I use.
Oh, got it.
You're listening to The Edge with Mark Thompson.
Great to see the face of J. Elvis Weinstein again. Josh, I've missed you.
Likewise, Mark.
We've had almost a month away from each other.
Yeah, it wasn't. I don't think that's why, though. It wasn't the cause of it. It wasn't our need for separation.
No.
It was a side effect.
Exactly. I was out of the country.
And in a lot of countries, right?
Yeah, we had quite an itinerary. Started in Barcelona, then went to the south of Spain, Malaga. That's where Picasso was born. And went to Gibraltar,
wow,
which is really cool. It's this spot that's shared between Britain and Spain.
At the mouth of the Mediterranean.
At the mouth of the Mediterranean. You can look across from Gibraltar and see Morocco. That's where we went next, but not before we stopped in Lisbon. So we only a day there in Lisbon. And then caught a flight to Morocco, to Fez, Casablanca, Marrakesh, and an area just in the foothills or mountains above Marrakesh. That's where Richard Branson has this place that's really cool. So we were there also.
Nice. And did you have Crosby, Stills and Nash in your head the whole time you were in Marrakesh?
I swear to you, I couldn't get that song out of my head.
I wouldn't be able to either.
Couldn't get I mean, day after day, though, I couldn't get it. I haven't thought about that song in years. And so I looked to see the origins of this Marrakesh Express, and sure enough, it was from a real trip on the train to Marrakesh. And the lyrics all describe various things noticed on that trip.
Okay, cool.
And then, the thing about Morocco is they have that call to prayer 5 times a day.
Right.
And when you first hear it, it sounds like an air raid signal, but it's a guy yelling, God is great, or time for prayer, and time to thank God. Then 5 times a day you hear it, and the first one's a little after 6 in the morning. Right. And no one breaks stride, no one changes anything they do. It's just kind of a reminder, and then they get to prayer as quickly as they can.
Right.
But they don't literally drop what they're doing and go to prayer. Apparently that's the way it works. But it was kind of cool. I mean, it was also weird. We were up in the mountains, very isolated. And yet, when that call to prayer comes on, you hear this blaring across this mountain landscape. And so it's reverbed across the mountain landscape, and it's wild. It's so eerie almost, And, of course, when you go up into the mountains, you see the most modern, the most beautiful, perhaps, and certainly it's sort of reflected as the most treasured building is the mosque. It's just this stunning showpiece in the mountains. You go way up into the mountains I'm talking about. So these villages are really hard to reach. You're having to walk across these switchbacks and all the rest, but there it is, a big, beautiful mosque, and that's where that clarion call comes from 5 times a day. So I asked, is that live or is that a recording? And it's live.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
You're going to do something that big.
Yeah, well, you have a guy there.
Right.
I would have auditioned if I could speak Arab. Ladies and gentlemen, a call to prayer.
Coming up next.
It's the 3rd call to prayer of the day. Some say the best. Then we went on from Morocco to Paris. And finally, I finished up with a night in London.
Okay. Quite a trip.
It was really great.
What was the total time gone?
I think it's 3 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a long. I can't do trips that long.
Initially, you feel like, oh, I'm really, I could wrap this up at the end of the week. And then after a few days, you're like, wow, this is really cool. I just don't really want to go back right now.
Yeah.
The other thing that happens now is that Twitter and websites and being able to read the LA New York Times, Washington Post, whatever you're reading.
Yeah, we take our bubble with us wherever we go.
You really do not feel at all isolated. Travel's a great thing.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings about it because I did it for so long for a living. Even though it was, domestic travel always, but I was on the road, 40 weeks one year. And I don't have a big wanderlust, so I always like to have sort of a mission attached. Like, shooting a doc was a perfect thing for me to go to Hong Kong and Singapore and Macau and Tokyo, and having a mission feels good to me and gives me a reason to get out of my hotel room and not, sink into my bubble.
Yeah. There is when you're vacationing, there is an inertia that is sometimes hard, for me anyway, to overcome. My mother is up and shot out of a cannon at 6 a.m. and she just goes until really late at night, and it's amazing. She also is an academician. She comes from a background, and she just has a natural intellectual curiosity and cultural curiosity.
Right.
So she's wanting to meet people and embrace the culture and understand the history and all these things, which I have, but on a much lower flame.
Right.
So I guess what you're describing, I think, is a good way to kind of take it all in, because you do have tasks that you have to get out of the hotel lobby to take care of.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
My wife is not is the opposite of your mother, even though she is also an academician. She's happy to read a book in a hotel bed. She's just happy. So there's been lots of trips where I'm like, all right, honey, I'm going to go see stuff. Enjoy your day.
Well, I want to travel in the U.S. I don't just want to travel internationally. But, it's hard to find people to travel with. Although, that's something else that personal devices have made easier, and that is alone time.
Yeah, you can be alone without loneliness now.
Yeah, it really is. That's a really cool thing.
Although, is it really alone is the question at that point.
Yeah. I mean, I used to read, but who wants to do that?
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm actually looking. I just scheduled back surgery because I've for the last 10 years or so, I haven't really been able to walk without pain for more than like 100 yards.
Oh my God.
So
what is that?
I've hobbled around Asia and while I'm doing all these things. And so having
L4, L5, S1?
Yes, both levels.
L4 and L5?
Yes.
Wow.
And one's ruptured, one's herniated. And so they're going to go do some trimming.
Well, they can do it now with that microscopic surgery.
It's laparoscopic.
Yeah.
It's outpatient. So.
I know, it's crazy. I mean, I had that surgery, L4, L5, S1.
I did not know that, and you were happy.
A double laminectomy. They took 4 bone spurs, and my surgery was 6.5 hours.
Holy crap! He's saying like a half hour for mine.
Yeah, I had my surgery in 1990.
Oh, okay.
So since then, they've improved it to the point that you need to slow the car down, and they can just zap you, and
Exactly.
you just keep moving.
I don't think he's doing lasers, but it is I think a smallish incision, and so
it makes recovery so much better. I have a big scar. I had a big incision. Post-op pain was significant.
Yeah.
But the recovery was also significant. So it really does work.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to having the power of walking back. Definitely.
Yeah,
it's made me look at the world like an 85-year-old man.
Yeah. Why did you wait so long on it?
Well, for the first 5 years or so, I was just like,
this will
get
get better.
Physical therapy. They give you a list of all the things you try before surgery.
Sure.
And so I was kind of working through the list, and none of them were helping. And I got epidurals. Did physical therapy. I did acupuncture, and then I got cancer, and I had all that.
Oh, that's right.
I had like a few operations within a year, and I just got a shitload of medical fatigue, really. And so in the meantime, I've now lost 50 pounds, and I've done Pilates twice a week for 3 or 4 years. And so I really feel like I've done everything I can do on my end to make it not be my fault I'm getting surgery, So.
No, it's terrific. And by now, it really is to the point that they are just so good at it. They were good at it when I had the surgery done, but they were good at it in a different way.
Yeah, now
technology
28 years deeper into the science.
So
I'm genuinely looking forward to not the actual procedure, but the results of it, because it's been a long time of dealing with this shit.
And it's really debilitating. I remember I was in emergency surgery, my back surgery, on a Friday night. And emergency meaning that it wasn't scheduled. It had been scheduled for the following Monday, but the pain was so intense, and there was no relieving it with Dilaudid, which is a morphine synthetic, and all that. It was really, really bad. And the doctor said, I just want to get you in right away. So he said, I'm going to put you in last surgery on Friday. We're going to add a late show surgery. So I go. This woman comes in, the nurse, and she fires up into my butt this stuff called Demerol. I'd never heard of it before that.
I have.
Yeah.
Maybe.
And before that moment, and this is something I'm going to apologize for in advance, because now I think I see that I was so wrong. But before that moment, I never could understand why people couldn't quit drugs with the way they were corroding their life. They lost everything, and they still couldn't stop. I mean, I never understood it. And when she put that Demerol in my butt, there was like a vibration that went through my body. I still remember it. And it was absolute euphoria. It was a physical transcendence that was so powerful. I would chase that feeling for the rest of my life. And I felt like, wow, I get it. I mean, instantly I get it. I understand. Now I see a lot of other aspects to it as well. But
Lenny Bruce once likened heroin to a 2-hour orgasm, which didn't help anybody.
But that was it. That Demerol is heroin, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hitting the same spot.
So now I'm talking like that because your ability to form words now is a little compromised, but you can still think. And they wheel me into the OR.
Right.
And that's the last surgery on Friday night. No one had planned on being there.
2:45. No one in the place except you and me.
So they wheel me in, and I felt pressure, maybe you'll appreciate this, to say something both important, because I needed to say my last thing to them before they put me under, and I wanted it to be a little clever.
Right.
Like I wanted them just to be funny enough. Everybody's there, and they said, "Are you ready?" I said, "I just have one last thing to say. I know it's Friday and everybody wants to go home, but I really need you to focus."
That's good.
And then, bam, you're out or whatever. But you will have none of that crap that I had to deal with on your back surgery.
No.
If you need him, he's always there on Twitter, at Elvis Weinstein.
I love living on the edge.
edge-show.com. This is The Edge.
Well, it's very exciting to have somebody filling in for Michael Shore who has real political chops. He's Richard Greene, the Civics Dean, everybody. Come on. Wow. Richard, really honored that you would come through here. You're someone who has consulted in politics for many years now, but you've also done something through the years, and quite recently you've emphasized it, and that is you've sort of underscored what the electoral process is all about, what elections are all about, what important issues face this country, and why elections matter. You do a lot of bringing this process to people who might otherwise not really be connected to it.
Well, my buddy, the science guy, Bill Nye, has done so much for something that people will otherwise, they glaze over, oh my God, science, and he's made it hip and fun. And I said, you know what? It's about time somebody tried at least to do that for civics, because you say the word civics, it's like taking Ambien, right? People just go zone out. I said, no, but civics is really cool. How I would define it is your ability, your knowledge of civics is your ability to be powerful and active and make a difference in the way you want to make a difference in your country. It's being a cool, very effective citizen. And so I have a whole new set of approaches and a whole new paradigm around that. And I love that you love it and happy to share it with people, because I think we need a revolution in politics.
Well, when you say that, I think what you're saying in part is that until recently, not a lot of people really participated in the political process. And I say until recently because obviously everybody's energized, but then there's sort of questions because everybody's kind of getting to the final exam late as to what we're really energized over and how we can best use what abilities we have to drive forward agendas that we care about.
It's really simple and it's sad. Most people don't vote in midterm elections, and
you put out a guide to the midterms. It was actually called, was it called like
WTF are the midterms, and you can still download it because I'm just going to adjust a few things, and it's going to be WTF are the presidential elections, right? It's just a pure fun civics dean look at what these things are and how you pick candidates and what the issues are and what the process is and the magic number. Everything about politics is just a number. It's second grade arithmetic. If you have mastered second grade arithmetic, you can master politics.
And what do you mean by that?
Well, let me just say one thing about the participation. So 18 to 34-year-olds voted at the rate of 23% in the previous midterm elections. The number was way bigger. We don't have it nailed down to that particular demographic, but overall, we had 49% turnout in this midterm, which is huge. But still, 115 million eligible Americans did not vote. So I think if they knew the magic number, this second grade arithmetic magic number approach to politics, that people would go, oh my God, I have to vote because it's such a simple thing. The magic number of America is 279. Whatever you want. Do you want a wall on the southern border? You need 279 people. Do you want to fight climate change and get more renewable energy? Do you want equal pay for women? Do you want money out of politics? Do you want lower college tuition loan rates? Do you want lower prescription drug prices? Do you want to legalize marijuana all over the country? Everything you want, right? Or do you want to separate families at borders permanently every day? Let's do more of that. I mean, whatever you want, seriously, you can get by electing 279 people. That's it. Only 279 people who want to do that. So 218 in the House. So now Democrats have more than 218. So this big bill that they're coming up with, it's called H.R. 1. You're going to hear a lot about it. It's going to be automatic voter registration. It's going to be getting rid of Citizens United. It's going to be getting money out of politics to some extent. All they need is 218 to say yes to that bill, H.R. 1, and that's going to pass the House. Then it goes to the Senate. It's never going to pass the Senate. Because not only are Democrats not in charge of the Senate for the next 2 years, even if they were, they would probably need 60 senators to say yes to this very revolutionary, let's change democracy, let's let everyone register to vote automatically, all of that. And that's 60. So 218 plus 60 means 278. The reason that they need 60, and this is something people don't know, the filibuster is the most important thing in American politics. You need 60 senators to say yes to something for it to pass the Senate if, in fact, one of the senators or a party filibusters. So let's finish the math. 218 in the House, 60 in the Senate, and then you need one more. Who's that one more?
And then the president has to sign it.
Has to sign it or not, right? And so the reason to vote for Hillary Clinton was that she would sign different bills and veto different bills than Donald Trump would sign or not sign, right? So if there had been a Democratic Congress that said, hey, let's get rid of fossil fuels in the next 6 years and only have solar and geothermal and wind and everything, and it went past the House and the Senate, a President Hillary Clinton would have said, yay, I'm signing this immediately, and a President Donald Trump presumably would not. So that's the importance of the president beyond their emails and their Access Hollywood videos. What pieces of legislation are going to change America in the next Congress in the next presidential term?
You know, in a way, you're making a point that I feel conservatives understood more clearly than liberals, because conservatives understood, I don't care about an Access Hollywood tape. I don't care about the fact that this guy's a boorish moron, because I know what you've just said, Richard Greene, the civics dean, is exactly right. And that is, he's going to sign and push through and okay legislation that I care about on taxes, on immigration, on guns, etc. And so I feel that the people who care about some of these other issues that you've mentioned, and they tend to be on the left, they don't or haven't found God on this point the way the right has.
No, you're 100% right. And we're missing one more number, which is how Donald Trump, with all of his warts and flaws, got elected. And it's because of the genius. This is going to go down in American political history as one of the most brilliant Machiavellian political moves in American history. So the reason, those of you listening, you probably know, Merrick Garland was nominated by President Barack Obama about 11 months before the end of his term to fill the vacancy left by Justice Antonin Scalia. It was going to be this massive thing. Scalia, very right-wing, very conservative. Merrick Garland was a moderate liberal, right?
It was, in a way, kind of a choice that Obama made to say, hey, I'm not picking a super lib here for the court. I'm actually extending this moderate choice to you as a way to just try to broker a peace between both sides on this appointment.
Can't we just get along,
Yeah.
right? Because Obama also knew that Mitch McConnell, as Senate Majority Leader, was in charge of the confirmation process, and he didn't want to try to stick a very liberal person there that McConnell could say no to, right? But McConnell said no to Merrick Garland not because he didn't like Merrick Garland. It could have been literally, it could have been George Will. It could have been the most conservative person in the world that Barack Obama had nominated, and Mitch McConnell still would have said no to leave that seat open. Why? Let's see if we can get inside the head of Mitch McConnell.
This goes to the election, doesn't it?
Totally to the election. This is why. This right here is why. I mean, there are many other reasons. Russia, for example, and James Comey with his announcement of feud. But this is the core reason why Republicans who hated Donald Trump, and many still are, they do, they're disgusted by him. I mean, especially real Christians. You cannot look at Donald Trump and say, I'm a Christian. He's living the Bible. He is the epitome of what Jesus wants in a president.
But I don't mean to digress on this, but I do think that you can say the Lord works in mysterious ways, and this guy's our savior, our legislative savior. He has pushed through legislation they care about. He's made the judicial appointments that they care about, et cetera. But now back to your campaign thing. So there's an empty seat, and it's doing what during the election?
It's the catnip. It's the holy grail. That seat is the seat that's going to help Christian evangelicals, particularly, accomplish what they have wanted since 1973, and that is to overturn Roe v. Wade, because they do believe, and many people believe, I have no problem with them believing it, that abortion is murder, and it is just something they're never, ever, ever going to let go of. So they went and they voted for Trump because they knew there was not just this seat, but there was likely Kennedy's seat, which turned out to happen, and also Ruth Bader Ginsburg's seat. So they voted for one for sure, probably two, maybe three Supreme Court seats, which would end abortion nationally in America, and they're getting what they wanted. Trump won, and I put that in quotes because I think there's a lot of stuff we're going to find out about what happened with Russia. But on paper, he won by 78,000 votes out of 330 million people in 3 states, right? I am willing to say with absolute certainty that there were enough Christian conservatives who hated Donald Trump even more than Bernie people and progressives may have hated Hillary Clinton, who did not vote for Hillary Clinton, who went to the polls in those 3 states, literally held their nose, pushed Donald Trump because of that one empty seat and the possibility of more, so they could get their Christian conservative agenda, not just on the Supreme Court, but with hundreds of circuit courts and district courts for the next 4 or 8 years. And they've accomplished it, and that's why they're happy.
Richard, they couldn't have literally held their nose and punched it.
You have no idea how long these people can breathe without breathing and hold their breath.
Yeah. I want to get to, there are a couple of races that are going on now. But before I get to them, this is a big question. You've just taken the larger electoral process and you've appropriately hung it on certain issues that everybody cares about, that everybody has an opinion on, because that's really what elections are. Unfortunately, we've turned elections in this country into popularity contests. So people voted for George Bush because he seems like the kind of guy I'd like to have a beer with, or Donald Trump's a strong man, and I think we need strength, and this country's been walked over for too long. I mean, there's sort of the kind of a general sense of crap, as opposed to the things that you've talked about, which are specific issues. But I want to get to a more fundamental point, and that is, it feels as though the process of elections is broken in this country. And if it's not completely broken, it feels as though it's completely broken in places, and there may be still some pockets where it is working. I wonder if you can give me a state of the patient's health when it comes to whether or not these elections are broken. I'm talking about everything from voter suppression to gerrymandering to however you want to define it.
I'm going to say something that your more conservative listeners are not going to like. And would love to have somebody push back on this and give me some information that could cause me to change what I'm saying. But I've been looking for 2 years for one thing, one piece of legislation, one initiative that the Republican Party in this country is championing, is putting forward, is sponsoring, that does not also have the support of a significant number of Democrats, that is supported by a majority of the American people. Let me be clear. And this relates exactly to your question. Because if they have nothing, if they don't have a product that can sell itself, the only way the Republican Party stays in power is through gerrymandering, through voter suppression, by making sure that young people don't vote, so therefore standing up against every automatic voter registration bill in every state, by scaring the crap out of people to vote not on real issues, but on fear. So this whole caravan, I mean, it's Wag the Dog. If you want to see what the Republicans did, go watch Wag the Dog. They created an event. I am not convinced that Trump didn't call the president of Honduras and say, hey, we're going to give you some extra aid. Why don't you somehow casually let your people know that there's all of these riches and open borders in the United States and get them to leave, let's get the timing right now.
I don't even think you need that to know what a ridiculous paper tiger this was. I mean, you can try to sell whatever BS you want. I think it's reprehensible. But having said that, when you commit American troops to go down there as part of your own effort to serve up the BS, I've got a real issue with that because I'm paying for that. I'm paying for a lot of stuff under Trump that I've really got an issue with already. But this seemed like a bald-faced horror show. And he was just bringing it to, and it was a chance to sell a lie with taxpayer money and troops that are real people. They have families for the holidays, and you're disrupting real lives. But to him, it was all just politics. And of course, this caravan we never heard anything about afterward.
And it worked. It worked. Think about this. There was a blue wave in the House, right? And Democrats won every conservative red district in Orange County, which, by the way, if you're listening to this outside of Southern California, you have no idea how revolutionary this is. You and I, Mark, have never lived in a California with a blue-orange county in our entire lives. I mean, this is huge. But he got what he wanted. Look at the razor thin margins in other places, especially, for example, with my dear friend Bill Nelson in Florida. He lost by, 12,000 votes? There were more, I'm willing to say this with great certainty, there were more than 12,000 Republicans who went out to vote for Rick Scott because of the belief that Donald Trump had put forward, because they love Donald Trump, that unless we have Republicans, these hordes, these caravans are going to come, and with these open border Democrats, they're going to come in and they're going to rape your wives and your children. None of that is true.
They really have sold the open border Democrat thing. They've associated the Democrats with open borders, which none of the Democrats have said they want.
So Mark, if you're a Democrat, do you know any Democrat here in liberal Los Angeles, California, that wants open borders?
No, of course not.
And ask me if I want open borders.
No,
of course not. So do you hear? So I want your conservative friends here. Do you understand? I am a lifelong progressive Democrat. I even ran for Congress years ago on the Green Party. I do not want open borders. I want every person here in this country to come here legally. Got it? And I don't want to get rid of ICE. I want ICE to do things in a humane way, but they have a job to do, and I want them to protect America. Got it? I'm a liberal Democrat. I'm saying that. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think that what's happening is everything's being painted in a very black and white way, in a very stark way. So there are no nuances anymore to anything. Just so some of the things you've just mentioned require nuance, and I just don't think it exists anymore in the dialogue.
But I'll tell you a black and white thing, right? I cannot find one member of Congress who is willing to publicly say that climate change, A, is a serious, potentially existential threat to life as we know it in this country and this planet, which is something I believe, and that human activity is significantly responsible for making whatever climate change there might otherwise have been much, much worse.
But here's why I'm glad you're Richard Greene, the Civics Dean, because I'm going to say something to you, which is climate change, which I believe passionately, and more to the point, the way I argue it now, I talk about pollution, and I talk about discharge of toxic gases and toxic waste into the land and water. I think climate change doesn't cut in politics. So if you're a political mind, which I know you are, I would tell you right up front, I wouldn't play climate change up high. Now, you understand, it's the number one issue for me. The environment is number one. Get me an environmentalist, and everything else will fall into place. I don't worry about any other issue. I am a single issue voter. Environment, environment, environment. But I know that everything else I care about is going to fall in right behind anybody who's got environmental concerns. Now, with that said, strongly, climate change, I would eliminate it also from my stump speech, because I don't think people fundamentally give a shit. I think that's what we're seeing in election after election. People don't care. They don't feel the water boiling. It's crazy to me that they don't, but they don't.
I couldn't agree with you less. I could not
I love
disagree
that.
with you
Okay,
more.
go for it.
By the way, I love that you're an environmentalist. And also, so you walk your talk. People may not know that Mark Thompson does what I believe to be the single most important thing any human being can do to stop or prevent or decrease the influence of climate change, and that is you do not eat meat.
Right. I'll tell you, no, I don't consume any animal products, but I also will say this before you nominate me for sainthood. I do that for ethical reasons. I don't even do it. I mean, it has the added bonus of the environment, but I do it because I want to alleviate suffering. So, I'm not perfect in other ways too. I mean, there are plenty of ways I'm sure that I'm messing up the environment, you know what I mean. No one's perfect, but yes,
animal
I do that.
agriculture is the single most direct thing that we can reduce, right, by our decisions for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right, every day. Okay. Every day. And I think it's an ethical thing, too. Are you going to eat something that you know is going to contribute to fires like we just saw, where you have over 1,000 people still missing and you have young people, old people burning alive in their cars? I mean, I think there's an ethical component to that as well.
That's a great point.
But let me tell you why.
But let's go back to climate change. Tell me why you think it is a big
First
issue.
of all, because we've never frickin' tried it. We have never, not even Al Gore was allowed, because of the conventional political wisdom with Bob Sherman, it polls as number 8 on the issues that people care about.
Well, doesn't that matter, Richard, where it polls?
Oh my God. We need 5 podcasts for this, because we have to redefine and redesign politics. So here's the thing. So what they did in 2000, and the reason Al Gore lost, there are many reasons, but a major reason was that no one saw his passion or his expertise about something and saw him be this leader. He is a leader. We have seen this in the last 18 years. He is a real leader on fighting climate change. That Al Gore was not allowed to come out because the traditional political mindset was, oh, people don't care that much. It polls only at 11%. Let's go with Social Security. So he kept talking about these stupid Social Security lock boxes, and everybody laughed at him because he was disingenuous, it was not authentic, and it wasn't something he really, really cared about. Young people who we desperately need to get out and vote care a lot about the environment. They care a lot about climate change. Why? Because they're smart, because they know if they're 23 that the climate, by the time they're as old as you and I, may be completely fucked up.
No.
Right? They get that, or most of them do. But no one's talking about it. And I think that's a huge mistake. Had Hillary Clinton talked more about climate change and the differences on the climate legislation that is currently even in the United States Congress, and how she would sign the bill to expand renewable energy, how she would sign the bill to put a price on carbon, how she would sign the bill to limit carbon emissions to zero by 2035. Young people would have had something to hold on to instead of their hatred and distrust and dislike of Hillary Clinton. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense. But let's now go back to the electoral map, because I feel like you're talking sort of like a coastal politician or a coastal coastal political analyst. Isn't it the case that places critical to Trump's victory, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, these are places that maybe that message wouldn't have resonated in any way that would have changed the outcome?
I completely disagree. Madison, Wisconsin, the most liberal place in the Rust Belt, probably, right? University of Wisconsin. I guarantee you that there were enough students there and friends of students there that lived in Wisconsin who did not vote. Oh, Hillary's got it in the bag. Look what they did to Bernie, blah, blah, blah. Because, right, they didn't vote because they didn't feel like it was an urgent thing that would affect their future. And because no one was talking, and I blame the media as well. No one, if we think back about 2016, we think her emails, an endless story, and his Access Hollywood, his boorishness, his ridiculous tweets. We never really had the conversation about content and issues and pieces of legislation. Had we done that, here's the thing. I'd be willing to bet anything, and I've made these bets, and I've always won, that you take 100 people at random, and you go, okay, let's talk about getting money out of politics. Let's talk about climate change. Who is the party that is responsible for, if you want that to happen, to making it happen? Most of the people say, you know what, they both suck. They can't get anything done. They both take money from special interests, so they all suck. I'm sitting it out. As opposed to, oh my God, do you know, there is a bill, it's called the Off Act. Tulsi Gabbard has just introduced it, and it's to get off of fossil fuels by 2035. Guess how many Republicans have signed on to that bill? 0. Guess how many Democrats? Like 150, 200. I mean, it is only the Democratic Party that's going to do that. People don't know that. We have to start talking not about politicians or politics or political parties. Forget Democrats, forget Republicans. Talk about pieces of legislation. I am going to vote because I want to put a price on carbon. There's a bill for that. Sheldon Whitehouse, Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, the American Opportunity and Carbon Fee Act, right? I'm going to vote based on whoever is supporting that, and otherwise forget it. I don't care about emails. I don't care about grabbing whatever. Yes, it's disgusting, but the Republicans win because they keep their eyes focused on the prize, the Supreme Court, the lower courts, and the kind of pieces of legislation that are not majority supported, but they are now because they have overwhelmed the system with their people in Congress, even today, in the Senate.
That comes down to messaging, though, what you're talking about, and that is something that you're very good at, because I know as a political consultant,
everything is messaging.
Messaging is the whole thing. They message better than the left has messaged. So even if you accept your theory, which is that young people will rally to climate change and rally to environmental issues, you need to message them clearly enough to get them to rally.
Right. So here's the message, because there's something happening right now which is very important, which is there is an election on the 27th of November.
In the South.
In the South. So a few days after Thanksgiving in Mississippi, there was this guy, Thad Cochran. He was a senator from Mississippi. He got sick. He had to leave. The governor of Mississippi replaced him with a temporary replacement, a woman named Cindy Hyde-Smith. Now, you may have heard of Cindy Hyde-Smith a couple times. She's the one who joked about going to a hanging because she so supported this guy. If so-and-so invited me to a hanging, I'd be there in the front row.
She used the word lynching, didn't she?
She said a public no, hold on, what did she say? A public, let's pull up the exact words. She also said, yeah, I think it's a good idea if we make it harder for young people to vote. In other words, that whole Republican philosophy of let's suppress the vote because we don't have a product that is desired by the majority of American people, especially young people. And again, if Democrats were in the same position, they would do the same thing. What's the quote?
You're right. If he invited me to a public hanging, I'd be on the front row.
Right, but it's Mississippi. We know what that is. That means not a general, hey, let's find somebody. No, let's find a black person.
That's where they used to hang black
and
people.
lynch them. I think it's the state with the number one amount of lynchings in history. And as a messaging person, I saw her chance to walk that back. And they said, Senator, because she's a temporary senator now, do you have anything else you'd like to say about this statement? She goes, no, the statement speaks by herself. I saw the whole press conference. She said it five times.
She stonewalled it, yeah.
As opposed to saying, you know what? Oh my God, that was such a stupid thing. You know, it's a thing. It's this term of high regard. But oh my goodness, this is Mississippi, and it was incredibly offensive given our history in the state.
It's so easy to walk that back.
Except in the age
She
of
didn't
Donald
want to.
Trump. Thank you. Thank you. It's a dog whistle. If she walked it back, she would lose some of that fervor amongst her right-wing white nationalist base, who she needs to turn out on November 27th. So
But she faces a threat, doesn't she?
Right. So Mike Espy, who's this really impressive guy, he was a cabinet secretary under Clinton, Secretary of Agriculture, and he only lost, here was the votes. It was Cindy Hyde-Smith got 41.5%, Mike Espy got 40.6%, and then there was a third-party candidate who got 16.5%. Now, that third-party candidate, Chris McDaniel, is out, so it's very, very close because it is a special election, a recall election in a midterm election year. So you have low turnouts in midterms and you have super low turnouts in runoffs. So if young people, if black people, if progressive people come out to support Mike Espy, he can flip the state of Mississippi. And why would we support him? Is it because he's handsome or because he's this or because he's black or not because he's black, right? No, let's get beyond individual candidates. Do you want Mitch McConnell and an anti-environmental, anti-animal rights, anti-get money out of politics, more military spending, let's build a wall? Do you want that faction of American political establishment to be running the United States Senate? Or do you want to have more people who want to not build a wall, who want to have lower college tuition loan rates, who want to legalize marijuana, young people like that, who want to put a price on carbon, who want to develop renewable energy, all of these things. So politics right now is as easy as it's ever been. And it's impossible, in my opinion, for one person in the United States to sit out if they truly understand what's at stake. Because whatever you want, there's a party for that, and then there's a party for the opposite of that. And so it's not like, oh, it makes no difference. It totally makes a difference. So if you care about the environment, you got to vote for Democrats. If you care about building a wall, you got to vote for Republicans. And then there are a bunch of other issues. And I wrote a piece in The Hill entitled Voter Guide for the 100 million who will not otherwise vote. It's still relevant.
It is still relevant. A lot of the things you talked about here are in this piece, and a lot of the things that we didn't get time to get to here are in this piece. So there'll be a link to it on our website, which is edge-show.com, and you can find Richard Greene's voter guide for the 100 million who are not planning to vote. But in that...
And WTF for the midterms.com.
Oh, WTF for the midterms.com.
It's a free book which will tell you everything you need to know about politics in general and the midterms, and then I'm going to be customizing that for the 2020 presidentials.
It is really cool that you came by, and I'd like for you to put us on your little route of places that you stop by, because I think you have great things to say, and it's fun hearing them, Richard Greene.
And they can follow my stuff on Twitter at The Civics Dean.
At The Civics Dean. He is Richard Greene, The Civics Dean, everybody. Come on. Woo! Thanks, Richard.
Thank you, Mark Thompson.
Get more of The Edge on Stitcher and iTunes, or go to our website, edge-show.com.
Well, two of my old friends who are stand-up comics and writers and otherwise entertainment people are here in L.A., and they're here to visit a friend of ours who's sick. I felt what better chance to exploit my friend's sickness than to ask these two guys to come in, sit on the show, primarily because they have these stories, and as they're talking, I'm kind of thinking, oh, well, why not just share them with the audience? Maybe the audience will find them listenable. So first I'll welcome Tim Bedore. Hi, Tim.
Hello, thank you. And I love the silver lining thing that you're doing here. You're turning the negative into a positive. This is a good thing. That's life in a nutshell. It's really what you got to do.
I'm looking for those life in a nutshell moments,
Yeah.
Tim. And John Ross. Hi, John.
Hi, is it life in a nutshell or is it L.A. in a nutshell?
Well,
we come out to visit a friend.
Exploiting
hey,
others'
let's
pain.
do a show.
As we're digging down, yes.
Yes,
it's
let's promote ourselves.
Life in L.A. in a nutshell. There
How
you
about
go.
a show about a bunch of guys who come in to see someone who's ill, and then that's where the comedy ensues.
So that's an upper demo version of
So we can
LA.
tell our friend, hey, I'm so sorry, we don't have time to see you. We're pitching at
Yes.
Paramount.
So it's sort of like the Big Chill, except he's not quite dead yet.
You're right, though. There are a lot of facets to this little situation. So, John, for listeners to this podcast, John has been on before. John's the guy who moved to New England to a small rural community. This is after being a writer on all these shows, and yet he gave it all up to raise his child in New England. And he became, and you told the story on this show, a post office delivery guy.
A rural carrier. Yes.
Is that what they call it?
Yeah,
Rural
a
carrier?
rural carrier. That's when you ride around in the truck and put the mail in the. You don't get out of the truck except for delivering the packages. You just stick them in the
Right-hand
mailbox.
drive?
Yes.
Right-hand drive? Love that.
Yeah. And you'll remember also, those who listened to that, but if you didn't, I'll just mention, I thought that sounded like the most charming, magnificent life, that you've shaken the noise of the city and you've gone to this rural community to raise your child, and now you're a rural, what do you call them, delivery?
Rural carrier. I believe.
Now you're a rural carrier. I mean, it just sounds like Mayberry, right?
Everyone thinks that.
Yeah.
I thought that too, and I was completely mistaken. It's the same thing that people think a cross-country trip in an RV is a good idea. Everyone thinks that until they do it, and then you realize it's a terrible idea.
Yeah, because you also did that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And had to scuttle it halfway.
Wow, you should have checked in with. I would have talked you out of both of those.
I know.
Is that right? Because both seem great to me.
No, both don't seem great.
Right, wow.
I mean, if you want to be a mail carrier, were you a government employee?
Yeah.
And so, is there a pension involved?
No, because
How many years do you have to go to get that pension?
I'm not sure about that, but they, just like all businesses, they figured out a way to have a part-time. Like I was a fill-in. Like I would do it on this guy's day off, so I really technically was only supposed to work one day every other week, and then anytime he was sick or had vacation. And you can, if you want, start to learn other carriers' routes, so you can fill in for them. And I could have been a rural, but you are, I don't know what they call it, an associate or something, but you don't get any benefits.
I think it's telling, Tim, that you, in evaluating the situation, went at it from a different perspective than I did. I thought, isn't it a great life choice you've made?
Oh, no.
Because
It's
you're
all about
in
the-
New England, and it's about, but you went for,
The pension.
wait a minute now, is there a pension involved? Are there benefits? You went for the money.
Yeah, well, not the money, just the security.
Money
So, you were
associated
a
with security.
regular scab, is what you were. You were a regular scab. You were a union busting.
No.
No, I mean,
designated.
yes, it is official. You are, but they've created a position
There's
that,
no
that they
picket
don't
line.
have to, pay. But yes, you have this idea that it's going to be this leisurely drive through the country.
You're like, "Hi, Mrs.
And,
Robinson."
Hi, Mrs. Robinson. Here's your mail. Looks like, looks your uncle wrote you again. And, you think you're going to have some kind of relationship. And
Yeah,
you're
and then
gonna
they
drive
sue
around.
you for looking into their life.
Yeah, I guess it was so bad that you, mid-route, on some level, decided to wreck the postal truck and steer it into a tree, and that's how you got out of the gig.
That is sort of the punchline, but the truth is there is nothing leisurely about it. They would open at 6 a.m. I would get there the second they would open and feverishly try to sort my mail. And if I was lucky, in 4 hours, I would get it all sorted and into the truck and be out the door at 4. Now, to get it all delivered before it's dark out was a challenge.
And
I
you
was
described the maddening process of even sorting it. So
Yes.
you're already at wit's end after 4 hours.
Absolutely. And so now you're having to pay attention, and because they're so obsessed with safety, every time you get in the truck, you've got to set the parking brake and put on the seatbelt anyway, and check all your mirrors, because you can't drive this thing. It's like you're driving a box.
Yeah.
And so you have to depend on all these different mirrors, and you're pulling in and out of driveways, and there's 1,000 different chances to crash it every day.
And when did you, in the process of being the rural carrier, when did you decide, something, this really isn't what I had envisioned and I want out of this. By the way, before you answer, you had committed so much to the test and all this. You had so much time and energy went into getting the gig. You had to be reluctant to let go of it.
Well, can I ask this at this point? Is there a pension involved? Can you get a pension at this point?
No.
Now, let me ask another question. So it took you 4 hours to sort.
Yes.
What would it take a regular, a professional, a full-time person who regularly did this to sort your 4 hours worth of work? About 4, or
I
would they
think
do it?
possibly in 2?
Yeah.
Because I explained this, I think, on the other podcast. But the thing is, when you know the route and so well, the way the boxes are set up, where you're putting it's set up the way you drive it. So once you know it, you can look at an address and just almost without even looking stick. But when you don't know and you've got to look through everybody, no, it's down to my right. Oh no, it's on the other side of the street. So you're it's onto my left. Every letter is, you have to study it and look through.
Right.
Yeah.
It would be kind of like, an analogy might be, if you know the keyboard.
Yes.
Your fingers can find without thinking.
Yes.
As opposed to not knowing the keyboard and not being an alphabetical QWERTY.
Right. And every single time you had to go, where is the S?
Q?
Is it on the top row or the middle row or the bottom row? Is it on the left, the right? And every single letter. And also this guy whose route it was, who I was filling in for, was kind of a jerk in that he would take his vacation the hardest 2 weeks of the mail year when the packages were the most.
Yeah, and the Christmas series.
Yes, and the weather is the most challenging. And so I had not been doing it that long, and I actually didn't, I knew it wasn't for me, but I couldn't bring myself to quit because I felt like I would be leaving them in the lurch, and I felt bad for everybody. So I said, I'll just get through this. But it was a snowy day, and I slid off the road and into a tree.
And did the packages then end up getting there
that day?
That day?
A
tow truck came and delivered the mail for you?
Well, a replacement truck and driver came out, and I actually...
There's a postal SWAT team that's waiting for these
And this
kinds
guy's
of
a school
situations.
teacher, and he teaches at my daughter's school, and I know him now. But he didn't remember. I said, hey, you came the day I crashed that. He goes, oh, yeah. So...
Did it take 4 hours to sort from one truck to the other?
You have to resort.
He took
It's regulation. We got to resort.
Did everything come out in the crash? Did it unsort itself and hit the floor? Not that bad of a crash?
Not that bad of a crash.
Are there airbags
bad
in
enough.
the common?
No, there's
there are no airbags.
So, I don't know. How did we get on this?
Well, I just was talking about...
Country life?
Yeah, country life, because I would say of all of us, as people kind of are scattered across the country and the world in different ways, I think when somebody's making a radical adjustment from living in Los Angeles, in the city, to this rural life, I think that's the biggest change that we've witnessed. And John has done it. I mean, he's also like this gentleman farmer. And I don't know why I say gentleman farmer, I guess because he's come from the city and it's kind of like a Green Acres thing. But the truth is he does it all himself. He's like, don't you like harvest your whatever and you have your plow your whatever? And
no, he hires out when the harvesting. Other people are going to do that.
We heat our home mostly with wood that has been culled from my land.
Now, is that environmentally sound, Tim, to burn the wood like that?
I am going to withhold judgment while John is here on the carbon footprint of. It depends. I guess
you have an efficient stove. You know, when I'm burning, you look at the chimney. You just see that heat coming out of it.
Oh.
There's no smoke. Only when you're first starting the fire. If you're burning wet wood and you have an inefficient fireplace, that's bad. But we have a very efficient wood stove, and I cut with my chainsaw.
Which is electric and solar powered, because
and I log and skid the logs. I'm like a lumberjack.
Are you out there by yourself doing this, or do you have like an assistant who wears overalls? And
I wear the overalls in this scenario.
You wear the leather pants. The chainsaw might hit you skid off your leather chaps, or don't forget to do that?
I don't have the chaps. They're kind of expensive. I have the kind of double flannel, and I have caught the chainsaw to them a couple times. So there's some holes in it, but I'm okay.
You wear the goggles, of course.
I have a mask that comes down. It's a hard hat with the ear flaps and
same mask you use for the beekeeping.
And so I cut the logs into rounds and I pile those, and then there's a splitter that goes on the back of the tractor, and I split. So I just finished splitting next winter's logs, wood. For next year.
How are you getting next winter's wood, Tim?
I called John. He has friends at the mail office, the post office, and they ship me cords of wood. It's not efficient.
No,
but if you're going with wood as a heat source, why not just go completely inefficient and have it shipped at bulk rate? We do not have fire burning fireplace anymore.
You left Los Angeles and moved to
Minneapolis, and so we have gas inserts.
Now, there's a lot of cold in Minneapolis a lot of the year.
Yes, we don't have to import it; it just comes to us.
So, you decided, as you said, to just heat in the traditional
way. No, I know people. In fact, we have neighbors who put in a soapstone hearth and floor that comes out about 6 feet from the teeny firebox. And they heat in Minneapolis their entire house with wood.
Called thermal something, because you heat the fire heats these stones.
Yes,
and
it radiates.
So you're actually almost lighting the fire the day before and getting the house. Yeah.
And they'll get up, and it's like a 3 or 4 log firebox.
Yep.
That's all that it takes.
Yep.
But all the heat goes to the soapstone, which it's one of those qualities that soapstone has, which is why you use it.
We looked into it. It's very expensive, and
Soapstone heavy.
And you have to reinforce
The basement.
The basement, and so it would have been a lot.
Yeah.
So we didn't do it.
Yeah.
We thought about it.
No, it's a cool thing.
But you don't do any of that, Tim.
I do not do any of that, no.
You're just...
I do not have a wood lot.
Yeah.
I have 4 trees, and one of them's coming down this winter, so...
And you have I think what you both have is adorable offspring. You have a daughter, as does John.
Correct.
Now, your daughter's in college.
Correct.
John's is in high school.
9th grade.
Yeah.
I was just telling John, in fact, the future, and it's a cliche for comics and people to talk about their daughters and driving, the trials and tribulations and the strangeness of it. But this just happened recently. My wife, Karen, was out with some high school friends on a trip. Claire and she and I.
Claire's your daughter.
Claire's my daughter. We're texting back and forth. Mom is sending pictures of their nice digs in Tempe, wherever they are, and a cactus, and then the shopping. And Claire is much more active. Oh, that's cool. Did you get it? You know, they're talking. And then somewhere in this text chain that I'm not involved with much is Claire, apropos of nothing, says, the steering wheel on my car shakes. And that's when I got involved. So now I'm trying to figure out why the steering wheel, from a distance, why it's shaking, and I have her go out and check the weights, if one of the rims threw a weight, if it's out of balance, and what speed, any speed.
So you're like the car guys.
Yes, I'm trying to figure this out.
Yeah.
And the way she's presenting it is very innocent, and that's why I went to it threw a weight. And so now, as you go faster, the wheel would be out of balance, and then the steering wheel would shake. Well, she comes to the house from college to take me to the airport, stay with our dog when Karen's gone. And she says, Dad, you know, I think it's the right front wheel. So now she has more information on what's going on. And I said, did you check the weights to see if they're... Because I want her to learn about this stuff. And, well, I don't know. Maybe you go look at it. So I go out, and the right front rim has just got this huge dent in it. It's bent. Part of the hubcap is missing.
Wow. How did she miss that?
I come in, and I say, Claire, what did you hit? Oh, well, it's been icy, and I hit the curb pretty hard. Do you think that's... Yeah, that's it. That's what happened. So
didn't
don't
notice that
believe anything that your daughter says about.
Yeah, I feel fairly confident about her eventually driving, because she's been driving the tractor and the riding mower since she was very young, and she's pretty
Probably
adept.
a good idea.
Yeah, pretty adept.
Yeah, but they will lie. These young women will lie about. Yeah, I think maybe I hit something. It was icy. Well, I wasn't going that fast. Yeah, no, I think that's it. I think it's the big bend in the rim.
As you come back to California and, back in this stream that you used to swim in every day, do you guys miss it, or are you glad that you left it behind?
That's a big, big question.
Those are the kinds of questions we ask on this show.
Really? The big ones?
Yeah.
And you save it for about 10 minutes in?
That was the working title of this podcast. was
Really?
The big questions.
question.
Yeah.
Wow. The thing that I would miss is friends, contemporaries. You can't, if you were a comic of any accomplishment, you're not going to be finding yourself in that company unless you're here or in New York or whatever. So that level of conversation is gone from your life. Much of it. There are comedy scenes, and you're going to talk to some interesting people.
So what kind of people do you talk to now?
Dullards,
dopes,
You need another D.
dingbats. Civilians. Civilians. And they're interesting and nice people, and they mean well. But so it's
They
really
don't know that they're not as
measuring
full
up.
a human being as
No,
you show business
no.
people.
And they make the world go round, and God bless them, the country works because of them.
Sure.
But it's just so not interesting. No, they're fine. It's just, so that's what I miss. The thing that I miss. And the thing that I miss about California, more than anything, other than the ocean being right there, which was always important to me, was that people embraced change and possibility. When you go to other places, there are people in Minnesota who revel in wearing sweaters that their great aunt made by hand 1,000 years ago. It's just so rooted, which is a wonderful thing, to be grounded. But can't we change it up just a little bit?
You're saying that that reflects an inability, a reluctance to change. It's not about sweaters. You're saying it's about the culture and about society.
Yes, they like to repeat the same, and the whole progressive thing that was California for me. And we can have new energy style. We can try this food.
Sure,
that is less in the rest of the country, or in a lot of the country.
What do you miss most, John?
Well, the way I would explain it is,
do you miss it at all?
I miss the work, but the problem was the between times of working, that my off time, that I didn't enjoy that life of sitting in traffic and not having seasons and all that other, and the projects that I can't do. But so I miss the camaraderie of sitting around a writer's room table and doing that. And as far as the people, it's really comedians that you miss, because even when you're here, when you're dealing with, it's that darkness that's okay, that you can't. Civilians, it's just a different vibe. And so, but I have plenty of smart, interesting friends,
Right.
but there's just that evilness that you have to keep a lid
It's
on.
a cynicism almost? Or?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if it necessarily comes down to cynicism. There's a thing on my website called Jokes Comedians Tell Other Comedians.
Yeah.
And we tell each other jokes that have no relationship to our feelings on feminism or racism or anti-Semitism or anything. We just know each other's detachment and trust it. And it's all just about either the structure of the joke or the wrongness of the joke.
And sometimes it does have something to do in that it's a comment on how stupid this sort of point of view is. Like, it's funny for us to pretend to be pro-Trump, and where somebody who doesn't get that that's the joke is like, that's not funny. I don't understand it. Whereas we understand what we're saying. Sure. It's a different language. It's a different.
Well, and it's so built in. And then when you talk with other people who look at you, what? You just realize what you lost and what it took, either years to build up or whatever.
It is weird when you surround yourself with comics, particularly, and everybody's playing a song and harmonizing in their own way. The way it's pop, 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 pop. It's just back and forth with these, with some riff that you didn't expect. And this is just in regular conversation. It is weird then to be around anyone who then you begin or you say something sarcastic or you say something and then there's nothing, My girlfriend was at the Beverly Hilton the other night. We went to a benefit, and we'd waited an hour for the car. But the point is, we're waiting a long time, and she said, and she said this to the woman who was standing next to us online, I can understand, to be fair, they really haven't had any experience with big crowds and big events at this hotel. Now, that's, of course, where they hold the Emmys, the Oscar parties. There are probably 3 huge events there a week, so that's the joke. The woman next to her said, actually, they host the Emmy parties, the Oscar parties, and you just realize, okay. So just an example of what you're talking about.
It's funny. There is a brain injury that you can get that will not allow you to recognize sarcasm. It's true. And it's a lot more difficult to navigate life without being able to understand sarcasm.
I think it's called millennialism. That's what that is. They don't get irony at all.
But what that says to me is if there is an inability to recognize sarcasm, then there's also a spectrum where some people are much more attuned to it and some people are less attuned to it. I remember working for Jeffrey Katzenberg, and he had a lot of special gifts, but he did seem to not quite get sarcasm.
Well, there is a condition called nonverbal learning disorder that's maybe on the spectrum, maybe not, but they're not really necessarily autistic or Asperger's, but they just don't recognize any of those cues at all.
Right.
And everything is what?
And so I think if there is a thing where you don't recognize it at all, there's people who recognize it on the level of a 7 or an 8, and some people on a 5 and a 3. And so I think what it is about being with comics is you're operating at this level where the sarcasm is turned up really high and it's all okay because we all know it and recognize it and play in that space. But when you get around people who you have to dial that down and you can't be using sarcasm at that level, it's like you have to put a governor on your conversation a little bit, and it's like walking around with ankle weights.
Right. And some of it's generational too. If you work to younger crowds today, they just don't get irony. They are so sincere, and stuff that worked when we were starting out in the 80s in San Francisco won't work in the same way. And then recently, because we're now old and ancient, I've been working in Florida in some of these planned communities where people are 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, and they don't want to go out, but they want to bring in comics. So these are the people that we were working to when we were young comics starting out. On the weekend, it was people older than you paying full retail to go see us at the Punchline, whatever, in San Francisco. And you do some of these old bits, and they're doubling up because they completely embrace the ironic comment. They're just right. They get it. Culturally, they get what you're doing in a way that millennials kind of go, oh, is that serious? No, that was ironic.
These gigs, do they happen in like the clubhouse?
The clubhouse, and some of these places are actually putting up cabarets.
Oh, wow.
So they can have music.
So you never have to leave the gates of the community.
Yeah, they build like auditoriums.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
show houses or whatever.
Now, do you want to play to the kind of people that don't want to leave the walls? But when you go, they're fine and it's wonderful, and you go, oh, this is how it used to be. You look at them and go, oh my God.
I find when I perform now at regular clubs and stuff, which I don't do much, but I find I have to name the elephant in the room, which is me.
Yeah.
Which is I have to talk about how old I am. And, actually I wrote a joke about, that I am pretty old. I had to get one of those bracelets, that if I have like a heart attack or a stroke, there's a button I can push and it will automatically clear my browser history. but you know, you feel like I have to name the fact that
Yeah.
look, I know you guys are all in your
No,
20s and 30s.
if you don't-
and I'm
yeah.
out of place here. I'm way
Yeah.
older.
I mean, 5, 6, 7 years ago, that wasn't always the case, but now it is definitely the case that their grandfather just walked out.
Yeah.
And you have to explain, I've been doing this for years. Comedy started before you people. It's okay.
Yeah, you're in
I've
no
done it
danger.
before.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there is a look on their faces when you come
Yeah.
out that they think you, an old man, wandered in
Yeah.
off the street,
Or
and
we're
is
in the
lost.
wrong place because old
It's
people
weird,
are here.
you know, and that's something we got to wrap up. But I was just going to say that's something in comedy. You describe it in the way that you so recently have experienced it, which is sort of this ageism or whatever, or just that the age becomes this thing. But then you realize that other comics who are black, Asian, fat, you know, like I'm thinking of like a Ralphie May type thing. He does a bunch of material about how heavy he is. Certainly in some of those instances, you realize, wow, the audience is responding to that. They're seeing that. And so I need to pay that off comically some way. Mm-hmm. I think you're describing something that a lot of performers understand.
Right.
Yeah, no, without a doubt.
even
But
if
then, in fact, there was a perfect circumstance not long before we moved out of here 13 years ago. A club owner called me up, said he had tickets to see Steve Allen at the House of Blues. Did I want to go? Rodney's opening. We thought it was going to be comedy. Actually, it was a night of his music.
Oh, wow.
No, not oh wow.
It was
It
not.
was just about the worst possible thing you've ever seen. I didn't realize what a huge ego he had over his music ability. He wrote a rap song. Everything sounded like this must be the start of something big. As a polka, it was cosmically bad.
This is Steve Allen.
Steve Allen. But he did some comedy. He actually had what's his face, the guy that did the astronaut with the Spanish accent. What was Jimenez?
Jose Jimenez.
Was it Jose Jimenez? So it was all Tonight Show stuff from the 50s and early 60s. And we thought, and Rodney came out, and the crowd was hot for Rodney. So Steve Allen starts doing old Tonight Show stuff, which was all puns. You don't realize it, but another era, puns was the going concern. I mean, it was the big thing. And people who were hot for this show just started going, oh. He was at the height. He invented the Tonight Show and killed with this stuff that now sucks. It just
does
sucks.
change. You listen
Hugely.
to the serious radio comedy and you hear like the old, whatever it is, it's older stuff. Guys who are at the top of their top it's like, that's not funny, man.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah.
do we have time? Can I tell my Rodney Dangerfield story?
Friday, do we have...
This is a testament to why you don't want to do speedballs in your 70s. Mm-hmm. You know, because I worked on Hollywood Squares, and Rodney came on Hollywood Squares toward the end.
You used to write the
Jokes.
some of the material that the guys would say,
Yes.
Wait, no, hold it. These aren't ad libs.
By the way, when I was a kid, I thought they were ad-libbing. I thought, God, these people are all so funny.
Well, you know, that's a whole interesting thing. You know who let the cat out of the bag? Because Paul Lynde claimed that these were ad libs. Like this was when there used to be a curtain. You know what I mean? In showbiz, and he was put on the spot
Paul Lynde was
about
the
it.
center square. He always had something funny to say in the original
Super
Hollywood
funny.
Square.
And he maintained that there were no writers, that he came up with all that stuff. And it was Buddy Hackett on The Tonight Show who said, yeah, no, that's all written. They have writers. And the cat was out of the bag, and that was a whole thing. But anyway, so Rodney comes. So my job, besides writing the jokes, I would come on show day and have to prep my celebrity. And I would tell them, here's your list of the jokes, and I would tell them, you know, lean forward. If they've never been on the show, you got to stay in your light. And then you would tell them, oh, if they come to you and it's the secret square or a tiebreaker, it's not going to be the next question with the joke. It's just going to be true or false or multiple choice or something. Don't do a joke, just answer the question. And there were several different writers, okay? And I did not have Rodney. He was not my responsibility that day. But Rodney was very old. Like he was wandering around in his robe with nothing else on, and he was pretty doddering and out of it. But the thing was, his act was still hardwired into his brain. So if you could lead him to one of his punchlines, he could deliver. And so there'd be a question about, according to Good Housekeeping magazine, how many times does a woman get her door knocked on? And it would remind him, oh, my wife, she came to the door in her negligee. She was coming home. It's a fine joke. So anyway, they get to the game-winning secret square. It's for a car or something. And ding, 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 ding. All right, Rodney, true or false? Elvis Presley only ever won 1 Grammy, and it was for gospel music. Oh, I gotta say, that's a lot of lotion. Because that was the punchline to whatever joke he thought was next. And you never heard this, because they'd shoot that show straight through. They'd leave the blanks for commercials. You never heard this.
We're gonna have to cut.
And the funny thing is, because he's Rodney and because he has the timing, he did that. He said, I gotta say, that's a lot of lotion. And the whole crowd went, wait, what?
So you just cut that part out.
So they cut, and suddenly now they got to consult with the judges. Has the question been given away? Because that wouldn't be fair. So finally they decided, they can still do the same question because nothing has been given away. So we're going to take it back. And so they do it again. And when you see the show cut together in the end, unless you know something happened, you wouldn't know. But if you know, what you see is Tom Bergeron asking that question, and a very tiny, sad man sitting in a square going, true.
That's sad.
Yeah.
That's because I'm sure that Rodney would say, hey, or if you didn't say it, the truth is he had a lot of fun while he was coked up and partying.
Yes.
And, to get to that place where he's just wandering in his bathrobe, there were a lot of fun party nights. But it does land you in some tough spots after all of that.
There's a price.
Yeah.
The piper comes around eventually.
He died when he was 58. So
he
burned himself.
He lived to close to 90, right?
No.
I think so.
I don't know the age. Look it up.
I think
we
it
have
was
the machine.
early 70s, wasn't it?
No, I think it's close to 80. I think it's like 82, I'm going to say.
Well, he
Tell me.
probably sped up the expiration.
Because he really
date.
didn't restart his career until he was in his
40s.
almost 50.
Yeah.
He was born in 1921,
Wow.
and he died in 2004. What is that, Tim?
There's a calculator on that machine, too.
79 plus 4, right?
Welcome to the Math Podcast.
It's 80. It's 80 to 2001. It would be 80 years. It's 80,
What did I say? 82.
What did I just say? 83 is 79 plus
No, you said 7. Oh, it's 79 plus 4. I'm sorry.
Yes.
But
I heard 79.
But before all that, I said I think he died around 82. So,
Yeah.
So
you win.
yeah.
You win.
Thanks.
you win best guess.
right, so
I think I won the math part of it.
You
He
do
wins
win
best guess
you do
without
win
the
math
dates
part.
given.
What? Where can people see your stuff, Tim, and what retirement community you'll be playing in next?
Vaguebuttrue.com is my website. And what you'll see there, if you go there, it's mostly news stories about the animal conspiracy, which is a whole different deal. But I believe animals are trying to take over our democracy, and they're led by the squirrels, and I prove it.
And how about you, John Ross? People can follow you anywhere?
My Twitter is Fun with Friction. And this probably won't come out for months, so I can't plug my gig next Friday. But
It probably won't be up in time.
Yeah.
Are you playing a gig?
at Hawks and Reed in Greenfield. But then hopefully soon we're going to own that bar in Shelburne Falls, which we're not
John?
sure. We might call it Underdogs Lounge.
John is buying a huge
I
concern
understand
in,
that.
rural New England. So we wish you well, and we hope you don't have to return to the
Rural Carrier, which
Rural
I didn't
Carrier.
even have to do that. I was doing it just kind of, I thought it was going to be enjoyable and a source of stories. And it's a source of one story now.
All right, thanks, boys.
Thank you.
Later.
Oh, okay. Let me just, It's just something. There we go. Yeah. I want to thank you for all the ways that you support my friends on the Edge podcast. And if you haven't already, why don't you show your support and subscribe? What's the matter with you? Go to Edge Show. Oh, that's Edge Dash. What's with the dash? Stupid. All right, I want to thank you for all the ways that you support my friends on the Edge podcast. Show your support and leave something on their website, edge-show.com. Stupid. Why is there a dash?
edge-show.com.
Here with J. Elvis Weinstein, whose movie I'll mention, and I mention at the front of every episode, is streaming.
I appreciate it.
On Amazon Prime.
It is.
It's called
I Need You to Kill. And it's about stand-up comedy scene in Asia.
Yep.
And features the very funny American guys, Tom Segura and Chad Daniels and Pete Lee. And heck of a ride. Go take it on Amazon Prime.
And Josh, we welcome a returning contestant, Scott Harris. Hi, Scott.
Welcome back.
How are you?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Scott Harris.
Your ticket out.
Scott is the builder to the stars. I'm going to call you the builder to the stars, but you go by a lot of things because you've become this sort of media figure. I've seen you on shows, and I've seen you talking about like sort of self-help related things and like empowerment and like you're a life coach.
Are you a lifestyle guru?
It could be. Do you want me to be today?
I don't know. We'll see what kind of problems.
And then we
come
can
up.
build your home when you were done, too.
Nice.
I mean, we met you. You were doing the Ed Begley estate. How did that go?
It went well. It's done. You know, a lot of the things that I've been trying to do, it's interesting when you have kids that they inspire you to do things that you otherwise wouldn't have. So the short time that I'm on this world, I want to be able to affect people in a good way. You know, there's so much that you learn, and I'm not trying to put something out there that's egotistical as much as I just want to be able to help people. So if I have an opportunity to do that in my spare time, I've been working very hard at it.
Yeah, I mean, that's nice. I mean, I'm playing up kind of the celebrity end, and I guess, you know, you are in magazines, and I've seen you on shows and stuff. I guess what you're trying to say in that comment is, I know I got to get out there with my face and with my message, but the truth is I'm trying to have it be a net positive for the culture and society.
And I'm also trying to have fun doing it. You know, there's so many things that you understand and you see as a let's just call me a builder and, you know, somebody in life, and you realize that there's better ways to do things, right? I mean, haven't you ever seen that? And to be able to get the message out has been fantastic. I got to meet a lot of great people. I've got all these great experiences, you know, great stories. And the best part, by the way, the best part of the whole thing, I get to call Mom and say, Mom, check out the magazine. I'm in there.
Right. This magazine is Gladys Magazine, your source for inspiration and fashion. And there's a lovely, who's on the...
She's pretty, isn't she?
Victoria Kohnfeld, do you know her?
I do not.
She's from Days of Our Lives, I think. But there are all these different locations, Santorini and Maui and Ibiza and Nice and all across France. And then you open up, and there it is, Scott Harris. 10 ways to live luxuriously in your home. So I don't have to go to a luxurious location of the sort that I just mentioned. I could live luxuriously right in my own home.
You could fill these milk crates we're sitting on with flowers.
Can you take like a studio apartment in Hollywood? And you can, right?
Yeah, you know, absolutely.
You can trick it out.
Absolutely. It doesn't take a lot of money to live luxuriously. To me, living luxuriously is a state of mind. You know, it's not because it says luxurious on the tag. It's about how you feel in your house. It's about how happy you are. To me, that's luxury, you know? I mean, hell, I could sit outside and live luxuriously in a nice chair, right?
But as a builder, I would think you're used to taking an idea, even if with limited resources, and trying to bring it to life from the standpoint of construction, standpoint of, right? I mean, if it was just about living outside luxuriously, you just go to everybody's house and go, you know what, we don't need to do any of this. Let's just go take a walk and I'll show you how you can live luxuriously.
No, it's there's a lot of challenges in it. That's so.
I mean, it seems like a lot of the stuff you work on, I don't mean to interrupt, but it's beautiful. You know what I mean? I see gorgeous stuff. And you have worked with some high-end people. But I mean, I'm talking about, you know, sheiks and princes and all that stuff. But my question is, if you don't have chic and prince money, I know that really is important to you to communicate that you don't need all the big money. But what is the plan when you don't have it?
So when you don't have a lot of money, there's this thing called color. Color is one of the biggest things that you can do to impact your feelings and your emotions in a house. The other thing is furniture. You know, I would rather, Mark, live in a home that just has like one or two nice pieces of furniture than the clutter. So a lot of it has to do with the simplicity of alignment, you know, for me. And here's what's interesting is that I've never tried to build something that somebody else likes. I've never tried to cook something that someone else likes to taste. But with the things that I've made, I found that just doing what I liked, people started liking, you know. And it's kind of cool when you get princes and all these amazing people saying, I like it too. And so what I like, not that I'm special, but I like things that align. Because I believe that there's some part of the brain that just needs the simplicity for things to click, click, click. And when you miss that, and you've got just one thing that's off, just a hair. Like, that bugs me.
Let me just ask you, you deal with all these people and you talk about how it makes you happy when they like something that you've done.
Right, I'm a pleaser.
Yeah, so when you're dealing with a lot of high-end clients, don't they suggest some things where you go, and they want it, and you kind of just have to soldier on? I mean, some, gold-encrusted type thing that you feel might be a little gaudy or doesn't work. You have to build it anyway.
So here's what I do. I make a promise to every client that I refuse to build anything ugly. And you're never going to find a project where everybody likes everything. There's three things that influence design. To me, they're all wrong. Number one, it's what you've seen. It's what you've seen in a magazine, or it's how you want to be seen. And all of those things are not really talking about what you want. And so I have this weird trait, whatever you want to call it. People think it's odd. I call it intuition. I have this way of going in and I get this sense from people of what they want, but they don't really know it yet, if that makes sense. And you got to break through some crusty barriers with people to be able to get them to understand. I mean, we're talking tough love. I mean, we're talking tears. I mean, and what happens when you're able to get through to that person and understand the reasons that they want those things and explain to them and educate them as to why they're doing that, and it really wasn't the right thing. It's why my hair has gone mostly white now, but it's a very cathartic process for a client. It's very trying for me as a builder, and that's why I say life coach or whatever you want to call it, because homes are the best way to give therapy to people. They're very healing, and so at the end of the project, these people break down. It's like this, I didn't get it, I didn't know, and these emotional breakdowns that you've never seen, and the challenge, then you start again. So you can do the easy thing to just say, I'll build whatever you want, and here's the easy thing, Mark, here's what I do. Like, if something's really ugly, you know what I do? I kind of mock it up, in the bad, dirty, dusty corner. You like it? Doesn't look so good, does it? And then what I'll do is we will create something that we think's beautiful. So we'll put them side by side, and you walk in there. And I like that everyone thinks it's their idea. That's the best part. You walk in and they go, what do you think of that? That's good. That's exactly what I was thinking, right? And so that's how we build these better looking homes, or try to.
Well, I want to talk about the third item on your list of wrong reasons, and that is the how do people see me, or whatever it was you said, is the how do people want to be?
How do they want to be seen?
How do they want to be seen? And that seems like, in a way, that's kind of inextricable from the process, because if you're building a multi-million-dollar house, there is a presentational quality to what you're doing.
It is, but the number three, the one that you picked, is one of my pet peeves, because that to me is what stopped the evolution of construction, is the how you want to be seen. People stopped thinking about how to build a better home. They thought about what it looks like on the skin. They think about what it should look like to your mom, your dad, your neighbor, your kids. And so therefore we stopped thinking about how to make the home what's good for us. And it's the evolution of homes are still about, on the Richter scale, it's like a 2. They're still building homes the way they were in the 20s.
Right. Well, and I understand the ideal is that you can tailor a home to someone's lifestyle or their aesthetic or whatever,
right.
But something personal to them. But I also think the reality is if you're building a home like in the neighborhood we're podcasting from, there is a showplace quality to it.
Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't have these homes just so uber amazing that it just brings tears to your eyes.
Right.
I'm just saying that you need to shift your consciousness to not think so much about what someone else thinks of it, and you need to think about how you're going to feel in that. So
right, but I guess that's my point, is that a lot of people who are in that spectrum, part of how they feel is, what are people thinking of me?
Right.
That factors in completely
He's not wrong
to
about
how they
that.
feel
Yeah.
about themselves.
Right, that's
is
true.
what am I projecting
That is
to my
true.
rich friends?
that is very true. And there hence comes in the therapy, the house therapy sessions that we have.
I do think that you're automatically a bit of a therapist, and here's why. Because the design experience and the building experience of your home is intimate, almost by definition. You're in the space that I live in. You're talking about the stuff that I'm going to be using every day, all the places in this house that you've built, I'm going to be in for the rest of my life, or certainly for the rest of the life that I'm in the house. And so I think by definition, it's an intimate thing. So in a way, a lot of what you said doesn't surprise me. It's also why you need the right guy or woman. There's a huge place going up 3 doors up from me, and they're building, I don't know what it is, Concourse C at LAX. The guy's got a 25,000 square foot. There's 2 levels of parking. I mean, can you imagine with your guests? Are you parked on P1 or P2? An elevator.
We don't validate.
That's right. What a great way to make some extra money.
That's good.
It's a builder. His daughter has designed the entire thing. So I think the whole family is in that world, in that business, but she's done it. Building has always been a traditionally male thing, but I think there are women who are entering that field as well.
You know, when you think about building, yeah, there's a lot of women in the field. Actually, in our office, I would say, I think maybe more than half of the staff is women. I mean, women are amazing. Women are nest makers, right? A house has to be masculine and feminine to be able to be a complete thing. So it's ideal when you have both sides working together. I mean, absolutely. They're both living in the house, right?
Can you explain the difference? What is a builder versus an architect? What is a builder versus a general contractor?
All right, well, a builder is somebody that's doing it illegally. The general contractor is somebody who actually has his contracting license like we do. And then an architect. So big picture, good question. Big picture, the way it should work, and it often doesn't, is that you should have an architect as your conduit and the orchestrator of everything. A lot of people make this mistake. They'll go to designer, they'll go to the builder, they'll go to their friend, they go to their neighbor, and they let all these different people start to drive the process. There's only one way that you're going to make the process work, which is to have an architect. You know, we can call them an executive architect. They don't even have to be brilliant, but they have to be one place to be able to organize your thoughts. Everybody goes to that. From the architect, everything disseminates from there. You then have your builder, let's call him a contractor, okay? And then you have an interior designer, which is very important to do. Here's the thing, we see a lot of people that do not have interior designers, and they forget to do this thing. There's this weird thing that people put in their houses now. It's called furniture. And so you'll see these plans. They lay everything out, and you're trying to set up the bed, and it didn't fit. So it's important to have all of those trades. One of the things that we do, I'm fortunate. I have a lot of people that come to me and say, Scott, hey, we'd love for you to be the guy. We want you tell everybody what to do. We trust you. You're great. I'm like, I can't, because you need those things. And so I have to put people in a position, almost all of my clients, to actually hire someone to bird dog me. And I don't mind, but you need that. You absolutely need that.
You really are, or at least were, I know when we first met you, someone who was working with the Begleys and other environmentally sound projects or environmentally sensitive projects. I know, is that still something that's sort of a centerpiece of what you do?
I wouldn't call it a centerpiece. I'm going to be honest. I don't want to be a hypocrite. I met Ed before I was considering how important the state of the environment is. He definitely changed me for good. I was doing these things before, but to me, the environment's part of it, and they always say, are you a green builder? And I realized when I looked at the spectrum, there's actually a lot of colors when you put it through the prism. And so green to me is one of the shades. And you need to be able to look at every one of those vibrations or aspects or colors that go through this thing to make it. And one of the things that I focus on more, I would say, is the U factor. When you use materials smartly, when you conserve, when you pick your materials in a healthy way, when you use materials that are close by to you, you are actually taking care of the environment. It's one of those things like all roads lead to Rome,
But the difference in a carbon footprint over 30 years in a house can be very large depending on what you put down.
It is. So we still, we learned a lot. One of my team members showed me on Ed Begley's house that we actually, I think out of 1 to 100 points, we hit 105.
Wow.
So, and I think he needed 90 to go lead platinum. So, when we do it big. And so we do it for every one of our clients. We try to teach, we try to educate. And it's true. I mean, there's things that, here's one thing that we did for Ed's house, speaking of carbon footprint. We actually got rid of some carbon. We dumped it in his house.
Yeah.
So concrete, for one thing, it's the 3rd largest creator of greenhouse gases and one of the most destructive materials that's being used in the world today.
I didn't know that.
Please elaborate.
It's not only it's the creation of it. It's the amount of energy that's used to actually dig up. When you think about all the machinery that's required to excavate the earth, to crush the earth, off the gases that it comes when and you take a very natural, clean material, but once you start to assemble it in such a way, it is the third leading cause of greenhouse gas. So one of the most destructive things. Here's what we do on our houses. They're still burning coal. You can't stop that, right? It lets off this thing called fly ash. You put the ash. We're doing ash concrete. And so you can put 50% of the fly ash into your concrete mix, which is basically, instead of it going to the landfill, it's going into the concrete. And it's got this nice smoky smell, too.
I was about to say, isn't there any toxicity issues?
None.
I know when
None.
those things leak, it becomes a massive...
No, and the best part about it is it actually makes the concrete more plastic.
Yeah.
So they do add fly ash to it, but it's usually maybe about 5 or 10%. So there's things you can do. I try not to bore people with all the details.
It makes it more plastic, meaning you can go more boldly with how you're shaping it?
It means it cracks less.
Okay.
So if you're building concrete, I don't want to get nerdy here, but what you do is you have an admix and you kind of make it up of a number of different things. And if you're trying to make your concrete a little more less prone to cracks, you add a little more fly ash to it.
Okay. Wow, that's a cool thing. I don't think that's getting nerdy at all.
And is that a proprietary? I mean, does every builder have their mix?
Yeah, there's a mix. So every time we build whenever we pour something, there's a very complex mix that goes through. We have to send it to a structural engineer. It gets analyzed. It gets approved. We actually take the concrete. We do core samples. It goes to a independent laboratory. It gets crushed and pulverized and tested to make sure that it was exactly what we got in the house.
Okay, but it's mixed to your specs.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
While you're doing all these big houses for these sheiks and princes and celebrities, give us some of the weird thing. And people are going to say, why aren't you asking him exactly who he's, because he never says. We've already asked him a million times.
Builder-client privilege.
Yeah, Jennifer Aniston. I can't say whether I did or I didn't, Mark. I can't say.
You have a good memory.
So that's the reason we're not asking specifically. But just in general, in this universe of celebrities who have money or royalty that has money, they also have kind of quirky tastes. You talked a little bit about how you kind of try to reorient them towards something that you think would work. But what are some of the weird things that have been requested, like a koi pond in the kitchen or whatever? You know what I'm talking about? Are there extraordinary, extravagant, and exotic requests that come out of these worlds?
That's a good question. I would say yes, there are, and I know about a lot of the ones that do the fish tanks in the house inside.
They'll put a fish tank in the
in the wall, throughout. Like the walls are actually a fish tank,
which is really cool in some sort of fantasy.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, look, it's a good question. We haven't had. You know what, actually, the craziest request we had was this guy said he wanted to play guitar, and we created an entire movie and sound studio inside a mountain underneath a tennis court, which had facial recognition software coming up the mountains on cold water just to protect him. But it was the world's most expensive sound recording studio ever built under a mountain and under a tennis court. And then we had a funicular.
And could he play?
Huh?
Could he play?
No, here's the best part of the story, right? So after we're done, and I don't even want to say how long it took and what it cost to make this, they said, all right, he's coming in. Let's get it ready. Let's get it ready. They had the software in the car, so as he's cooling up, the doors open, he gets in there, and we had the pizza ovens. We had everything, right? We go in there. He goes into the office, and he calls Domino's Pizza, and he starts strumming his guitar. He's like, then he goes to Staples and got some office equipment. He's like, guys, that's all I wanted. So
wow.
I think, most of the people that we work with, they seem, I don't know if it's just how we attract or how it works, but we don't get these kind of bizarre requests to do things other than just make homes comfortable for people.
We were talking before we went on the air about how 25,000 square foot houses are becoming more common now among that echelon. What are the new rooms that people are coming up? It's like, I'm sure there's fantastic theaters, there's great gyms.
Oh, that's old school.
Right.
Yeah.
So what are the new rooms that people are adding to their house now?
All right. So if you're going to do the cool house, you want to know what the cool house list is? All right.
Do I?
All right. So you got to have a 2-story HERS closet, right?
A 2-story HERS closet with
you
elevator?
can't do one.
Or
you can.
stair, or
Well, we do
spiral?
elevator, or you can do a chute. So you want to do a 2-story closet because.
Whoa! Stop! I'm sorry. Talk to us, people who don't know what is a 2-story. What are you saying? You're saying that you're talking about an elevator? Whoa!
Absolutely.
You have a closet that's got an elevator?
Absolutely.
And so, how many square foot of closet space are we talking?
Yeah, you know, you could probably easily fit it into about 12 to 1,500 square feet.
Okay.
I mean, that's how you do it.
Jeez.
I mean, but you got to think. You got your shoes.
Sure.
You got your summer outfits. You got your winter outfits, and you know it's like going to a store. So what does a woman love? She loves to go shopping. So you got to make. So we make stores. So you have that. We do.
And that is the aesthetic you're going for, is a Bonwit teller or whatever.
Correct. So
Okay.
one of the biggest requests that we get from our female clients is they want these closets to feel like they're shopping. So we'll actually build display cases. We've even have one project that we've worked on that actually has TVs and monitors in the wall with flashing commercials going on. I mean, you feel like you're walking through Vegas.
And they want that feel.
They need it.
Something that's a dynamic, makes them feel alive.
Right. It does.
You know what?
If it helps you.
Yeah, I agree. It's like whatever.
If you can admit
Yeah.
that to yourself.
Now then you've got the things like you've
willing.
got gift wrapping rooms, right?
Okay.
You've got staff rooms. You've got staff break rooms. You're going to have an entire lounge for the pets. You have your own dog washing rooms.
Okay.
You got to do that. You got the dog grooming rooms. You've got the massage rooms for him and her.
Okay.
You have the floral room. Everybody needs a floral room because where do you go to put all your flowers together? You have about 2 to 3 nice kitchens.
Okay.
You have two or three nice kitchens?
One for entertaining.
There you
away.
go. Well, one's for show, right?
One's for show.
One's for show.
One's for staff to cook for your party.
Prep, and then you got the other one for the prep.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the last one is, well, the last one would be for the staff to cook in because you don't want them cooking in the.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
For your living.
Yeah. I mean, right? I mean.
Well, I guess at that level, you.
And then parking. You got to do parking.
Yeah.
I mean, at least 20 cars.
That's the.
Then tell me what the price tag is then for the average house like that you just described, with 2 kitchens, a 2-story closet. I mean, it would depend where it is. If it's in Texas, I guess it's not. But I mean, here in California.
So here's what's kind of weird. The more that we build, the less expensive it becomes. We don't necessarily charge more, but I would say going rates for California are, maybe more Los Angeles, are for the stuff that we do, starts out about $450 a foot. Between $450 and $650 is the current range if you're going for a traditional. And then if you're going to go modern, that's where the price can really jump up. One of the biggest things that we've seen as
Really?
cost inflations is the doors and windows on these modern homes. Okay. And when you factor in seismic activity in California and the amount that it costs to counteract that, you end up with these massive steel frames that really become like a commercial
Is
building.
that because of the big openness of the space
Correct.
without the ability to put in posts and beams?
Yeah, I mean, there's no such thing as a post and beam construction anymore. Now it's these big steel columns that are going down about 30 feet into caissons down at the bottom of the mountain. So,
Okay.
and then the windows, I mean, we've seen, believe it or not, a door and window package can be as much as $1 million on these homes. I mean, isn't that just wild?
Jeez, that's insane.
Mark,
I mean,
do you need some doors and windows?
I need some money.
He'll take the ones you're replacing.
But a lot of that is due to the energy
What do you
requirements.
do with the old stuff? Josh asks a very good, or as a reference to a good question. What do you do with the old stuff? I'll tell you something. On the way up here, you passed a bunch of places that were built in the last 5 years, some of them, that they are tearing down and building completely new construction on. Okay, so there are tear downs here in the last 5 years. These are mansions. They are being torn down.
It's like Japan.
Now, what does a guy like you, who has that gig, what happens to those old
Textural
windows,
waste,
the
yeah.
doors? I mean, there's good stuff in there. It's only 5 years old.
That's a really good question. So there is an organization that we work with in California called the Reuse Group. And what we do is we salvage as much as we can of the house. So what we'll do is, I mean, it's a brilliant process because we can actually demolish a house and a client can actually come out cash positive when they're done. And what we didn't do is put it into the landfill. So what we'll do is we tag every one of the items, we wrap them, we categorize them. Mark, we even take all the lumber off the houses. We de-nail them. All the nails will actually go into a bin. That goes into recycling. The lumber then gets used for making, you can't use it here structurally again for building a house, but it gets used for furniture making. So almost every one of the items on the houses that we take apart are recycled, and anything that's in decent condition is then sold to families that don't have a lot of money. So,
wow.
and you get a tax deduction for it, which is great because now you're donating it. Some of the tax deductions that our clients have gotten as much as $250,000, which that doesn't hurt, right?
No. God, that's impressive. Yeah.
And
I never would have thought that that's what happens. It's really cool.
Yeah.
And that's not just you. You're saying that a lot of organizations do it?
I don't think it's a lot of organizations do it. It's not a common thing.
It's got to slow down a demo a tremendous amount.
Yeah, it does slow down the demo. So you have to get a client that understands the process and understands the value of doing the right thing.
What did you do at the St. Francis Hotel in San Francisco? For everybody who doesn't know the St. Francis Hotel, it's a beautiful place on
Union Square.
It's got such sort of classic styling to it. You have to be very careful.
That's where I took my wife for our first wealthy getaway.
Did you?
Oh, no
when we were
kidding.
dating. That's where I took her to impress her. Was the St. Francis.
We went to the St. Francis. One of the investment groups that took it over, they wanted to revamp it. So we came up with some concepts for redoing it. Here's what's interesting. There was a big article that came out in the San Francisco Chronicle saying, big town Los Angeles firm is coming here to destroy one of our most sacred places. The story is there was in San Francisco when they had the fires that basically leveled all of San Francisco. The St. Francis was one of the only buildings that was left because they built it mostly out of concrete and steel. And there was a clock there, and everybody said, "Meet me by the clock." So as everybody's running around, that's where it became the central meeting place.
And that was 1906, I think, was the big
Yeah, yeah. So back then, and so what we did is came back. We wanted to revamp it, and they said, "No way, hell no, we're not letting these people from LA come here and take out. This is our history. This is history." So I pulled them aside and I said, "Guys, come here. I want to show you something. Do you see the column base? That's from Corinthian. Yeah. Now look at the top. You see that? They don't match. You know what? It's from that's Roman. See? And I said, do you see the fluting in that thing? That's that's from Italy. That's actually so you've got a time gap of about 300 years from places all over the world. I said, you guys have been duped. You got screwed. Sorry. And I said, if you think there's anything historic about this was nothing more than a stage set that was created. Right. If you think this is the way things used to look, you've been duped. And so I said, here's what you're going to do. All right, you're going to
I'll make your Doric Ionic.
All right.
I'll make a Corinthian Ionic.
Hey,
yeah.
This is a slap together job, guys. Are you kidding me?
Oh, and it makes so much sense though because it's California.
It is, yeah. And then you go over to the clock, right? The famous clock. They're like, well, you can't touch the clock. No one's touching that thing. I go, show me the clock. I got to see it. They said it was a grandfather clock. So I opened up the thing, and it was had all these parts from Asia. And
really?
I was like, come on, it's not even the real thing.
Paper mache.
Come on, you guys. This is not the real thing. So I said, here's what you're going to do.
Harris serves up a dose of truth.
So we cut all the stuff out. I said, we're going to make this more historical. It's going to be, when we are done with this, it will look like it was supposed to have looked. The way they intended it to look with some better understanding of architecture. There was a clock that was created that hangs over. I flew out there and got to pick this beautiful piece of onyx that now hangs over, sandblasted and carved in all of the Roman numerals. I mean, it was
wow.
Beautiful stuff.
Nice.
And so now that it's done, everyone still thinks it's the most historical. They forgot there's this little period where we wiped away history and then made it and fixed it. So
yeah, but you
can you get out the fatty Arbuckle stain?
But you didn't. In a way, you didn't erase the history. We enhanced it.
Enhanced it, and then we also did a.
But both are artificial.
Yeah,
right.
And we did a restaurant for Michael Mina there, which was one of the top chefs, which was amazing guy. And his only complaint about the restaurant was he said, guys, I'm having some problems. People won't leave. They're sitting here for 2 hours. It's too comfortable.
Isn't that great?
So,
what is the involvement of someone like Michael Mina, a celebrity chef who has restaurants all across the world, in a project like the one that you're talking about in San Francisco? Was he closely involved? Are you dealing with one of his people?
Oh, no. We worked with Michael Mina all the time. He was very heavily involved. He was involved in the entire process. He would fly down. We would fly up and meet with him. The Mina group was one of the best groups that I can recall working with. And one of my favorite things is Michael took all of us to Las Vegas.
Oh, his place there in the Bellagio?
Oh, yeah.
No.
But then we got to sit at the chef's table. He brought out all the caviar. I mean, I don't even want to think about how many tens of thousands of dollars that he just shed on us. He said, this is how I live. And then we got to see some special places behind the MGM Grand that nobody ever gets to see. It's amazing. He was very involved, very passionate, very.
How old a man is he?
He's, I think he's probably his mid 50s, early 50s, I would guess. Best guess. Yeah. 2 kids, and he's been doing so well. And the best thing is I got to take my wife there and said, check it out. I made a restaurant.
And have you done other restaurants?
Yeah.
Did Gordon Ramsay's, didn't you?
Did one for Savoy Hotel in London. This is when I was working with another group, and then we also did the AOC restaurant for Suzanne Goen. And Carolyn Stein, and then later built Suzanne Goen's home and redid that for her, did her privates. And that was
all of a sudden he can say that he's done homes for a couple of people. Kevin Costner, Kevin James.
Droppable names.
Yeah.
Are you
Ed Begley.
And did you develop any kind of a philosophy about restaurant design? I mean, that when doing it in the way you have for homes?
You want the true story?
Sure.
I had no freaking idea what I was doing.
Right.
All right. So true story. So I was doing the restaurant AOC, which became one of Los Angeles' top restaurant for 10 years straight. It was actually when I went to Thailand with my wife, we saw a complete knockoff. So I figured, hey, it's good enough. I made it across the other side.
Right.
So I had no clue as what I was doing. I was listening to Eminem saying, I think there was a song, you only got one shot, one chance.
Right.
And I said, I'm just going to do it. My wife said, just do it. Let's just make it work. So what I did, not knowing anything about restaurant design, is I just thought about what I like. So I made everything to fit me. And I thought, worst case, if it doesn't turn out, at least the restaurant fits me. So the chairs that were worked on, they fit my body perfectly. The menus, I hated having the big menus that you can't see over, so I made them small so I can see my guest on the other side. And I made the tables lower, so I just felt a little bit bigger because I made the chair, everything was squared off, and then there was a secret proportion that we put into every single thing in that entire restaurant. It was just an experiment to see if it worked.
What does that mean, a secret proportion?
It's called the golden mean. It's basically the shape of it's a ratio that mimics the human body.
Okay.
It's the same ratio as what we define as beauty. It's a ratio of the thorax. It's a ratio of the head. If you look at the most beautiful people in the world, they like Bill Clinton or people that anyone found as beautiful or attractive, they all fit within it. The Colosseums fit within it. The squares that they used to build the blocks for the pyramids fit within it. Everything that we find interesting. So I said, well, it works for that. Why not? Let's just see if it works for a restaurant. It works for the Egyptians. So wove that thing through everything. It was even secretly woven into the logos through the whole thing. It was basically an experiment to see if it worked.
Yeah. And did you feel like it did?
It did. I mean, I think if it was the number one restaurant in LA for 10 years straight, I think it worked.
You mentioned the size of the menus.
Right.
They don't go, hey, Sparky, we love you on the construction. But when it comes to the size of the menus and stuff like what's on the menu, that's all our thing. We're the restaurant people.
So I was working with Barbara at the time, Barbara Berry, and so we were helping with all aspects of it. And it wasn't easy. I mean, it really was not an easy thing. This is one of those tough love educational processes where...
I mean, they could legitimately say, hey, stay in your lane, which is not the size of the menus. Right?
They did. I mean, it was...
Imagine a chef not when you're getting into that.
I love those clients, but it was one of the first times in my life that I actually stood up and I had to say it's going to be my way or the highway. I mean, it was...
over the menu size?
No, it was over the bar, the charcuterie bars, where we finally broke down. They wanted to keep the old tops, and I said we can't. We did them out of walnut. So it's something you feel so strong, and you know that person needs to do it, but they're just going the wrong way. They're about to walk off a cliff.
Right.
And so it was one of those moments where I said to my client, I said, from this point forward, we're going to do what I tell you to do. And I've never done that. It was one of those things you walk in the car, you think, that's it. I'm going to get fired. I know.
Yeah, that's a gamble
and
for sure.
It was it. And there was a lot of screaming. There was yelling. There's like, you can't tell me to do that. That's not possible. And I said, from this point forward, you have 5 minutes of my time per day. Use it wisely. And just screamed and yelled. And I still couldn't believe words coming out of my mouth. And then...
Wow.
I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was a little too much Eminem on the way down. But then so...
It's too much success is what that is.
It wasn't for me, though. And it's like... something to explain. It wasn't me trying to do something that I wanted. It was something that I knew these people needed to do.
Right. You felt it was right for the project.
For them.
Yeah.
It's not about me. It's not about ego. I mean, I don't care.
I hear you.
And so when we finished that thing, to see those people, those were somebody that broke down in tears and hugged me and said, this never would have happened in the success that we've had if it weren't for you taking us by the reins at those moments and saying, you got to do the right thing. So
that's when you wish it was a reality show. That's the way it is for, what is it, Restaurant Impossible or whatever those shows are.
Right. It's very similar.
Like the last act, they
exactly.
go, oh my God, Scott, if you hadn't been insistent.
So, but what, in this process, like at a certain point, you are being emphatic about your taste rather than your knowledge.
But it's not my taste as much as what I think they need to do. It's their taste.
Right, but it's somewhere, it's some version. I mean, there's a Venn diagram there where that crosses over clearly, because if it offends your taste, you're not going to go with it. It sounds like, even if it's theirs.
I try to find beauty in people and beauty in their vision. I mean, in some way, if I did my job right, it's to go into side of somebody, find out what the most beautiful moments or memories they have, and make it tangible for them. You know, so yeah, I guess they've probably seen some ugly stuff. I mean, you're right. But I'm trying to guide them to what they know is beauty and what they've seen. It's really not about and that's what's interesting is if you look at my projects, they're all different.
Right. I was going to say that's the one thing that's how I know that you're not full of BS on this, because your stuff doesn't look the same.
Well,
right.
And it wasn't an accusation at all. I'm trying to sort out in your job what are you bringing? You know, are you an esthetician in some ways for people? You know, are you getting people in touch with their taste? Is that part of what you're providing for them?
I'm trying to get people in touch with their taste. Yeah.
Okay.
And there's things that people are born with that stop them from doing things that are beautiful. Like we have some clients who just think that certain things are cheap and you start to talk it through with them. And you find out that they had an experience in their life, like, God, my mom used to make me do this, and I'd sit in the room and I'd look at the ugly light fixture, so I don't like light fixtures. Hey, guess what? Light fixtures are okay. Get through it. It's okay. Get past that. It's all right. You know, and so there's a lot of therapy that you do.
Right.
You know, like
finding where the blocks and where they're coming from.
Correct.
And
you
if
know,
you can get past them.
Yeah, like, hey, medicine cabinets. You know, only poor people have medicine cabinets. We don't want a medicine cabinet. Where are you putting the
rich
medicine?
people just leave their medicine out.
That's what my dad told me. Only the poor people have it. So, you know, and you got to talk it because where are you going to put it? And so you do therapy. You're kind of pulling it out of them. So yeah.
Yeah, because everyone walks around with these things that are just there, and they don't know why they're there, but they're there because someone said it to them once, and they accepted it, and it became truth.
Yeah. So I got to do they asked me to do a show on HGTV. They said that was a triple threat: the designer, the architect, and the contractor. They said, here's what you do. Just walk in, okay? You get all white stuff, you know, white countertops, all this stuff. So they prepped the whole thing, right? Okay. So I had the whole thing. They did the whole spiel, sat down there with HGTV, showed it to them. Oh, bravo. We love it. It's beautiful. Thank you. Very nice. What's in the other bag? I said, the cool stuff. What do you mean the cool stuff? This stuff isn't cool. This is just stuff they told me to bring. You want some cool stuff? Well, yeah. So I opened up the other bag, and I did a black kitchen. Just black.
Yeah.
Black and silver. They're like, well, that's pretty cool, but that's not what we do on TV. So long story short, we ended up doing this beautiful black kitchen. It was one of the only ones they've done.
Oh, that's way cool. I'd like to see that.
Yeah, I can show you. And then the black, silver, and crystal. I mean, it was kind of cool. I just wanted to be different. And then we had the person who owned the home, was literally breaking down, Mark. They're sitting outside in the Volvo, and the mom's out there. My daughter's crying. I see that. It looks like, yeah. Uh-huh. Why is she crying? She doesn't like it. She'll like it. She'll learn to like it. She's going to like it. Just trust me. You know, and they got the cameraman going, Scott, can you please change your mind? No.
This isn't the finish we were going for.
We like the white stuff. It looks good on camera. No, the black's hard to read. I did the silver accents. It'll pick up. Trust me. Just the lighting. Long story short, after it was done, this person, amazing person, she went to do their personal therapy. And she calls me about once a month for the first year saying, I so love what you did. You found what was inside of me. I never realized, but I always wanted a black kitchen. And you found it in me. And I didn't realize it. And you didn't stop me. You didn't allow me to do what I told you to do. And for that, I am forever thankful. You know, and like those are the cool things that
And did you say, well, did you call the crew over? I need that on camera.
Yeah, get that back on camera now, please.
We're finishing up, but I wanted to get a word about lighting. Lighting seems like one of those great things that you can do that does change the look of things. It does sort of make a dramatic impact, and it also has to be done well or done correctly.
Yeah, lighting to me, you're right. The lighting, you know, in the after hours can be one of the most important things in a house, and it's something that's controllable, and it has to do with just how you lay it out. A lot of people do this thing where I call it overlighting. And they light up these homes like they're ready to do surgery on a table somewhere. And it's just, it's not nice. Look, to be able to make a home feel like a home, you need to mimic the lighting so it kind of follows nature to a bit, right? You know, it's unnatural to have these ultra bright lights. At nighttime, you've got a little bit of starlight, you got some moon. And so it's actually a healing thing and more natural with your body's cadence to dim the lights in the evening. And so it's not necessary to do it. There's also, and here again, which goes back to being green or, you know, the environment, is this thing called conservation. You don't have to litter your ceiling with these lights. A nice LED bulb, you know, they always say they came a long way, but they just put yellow paint on it, on the tips of these things. But candlelight's nice, simple lights. And here's one of the things that I always try to avoid, you have to avoid, is those beautiful clear bulbs. You've seen them, right? Mm-hmm. You know, and they got the element, it looks really cool, and it's in this, and it looks,
like
by the
Edison
way,
bulb kind of
like
things,
looks
or?
awesome in the catalog. I mean,
Right.
It's just beautiful. But then you're sitting there looking at the bulb, you know, when you got your drink in your hand, and it hurts your eyes. It's not attractive. So what you want to do with lights is I like to do lights that are, it's kind of an ambient light that just kind of lights the room up softly. You know, instead, here's an example, Mark. Instead of doing, down lights everywhere, you have to think about light doesn't actually light up air, right? So when you consider that you've got a down light that's putting out 50 watts of power, the only thing it did is it actually hit a little circle on the floor. It's actually not the best use of light, because that's about all you're doing. Take that same light, put it against your wall, and now that entire cone of light and energy that I was using now lights up the entire wall. It does it in a soft, nice, ambient way. And I didn't have to use all of that light and energy.
Lights have to be functional as well. Like I wanted a reading light, and I couldn't get reading light. I still don't have reading light in this house. And we have pinpoint lighting in the bedroom. So it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. So you need to supplement it with something. So to me, that was a fail from a design standpoint. Everything looked okay, but it just from a functional standpoint, sometimes it doesn't come through.
Yeah, and there's a thing called photometrics. So if you look at your light fixture, they will actually show, I like to do this stuff because I'm kind of nerdy, but it'll actually show what the candle output is, or lux, whatever you want to call it, at different levels. And as it gets lower, it gets less. And so you recognize, like if you were really to map out where the light's hitting in a house, you waste a lot of these lights. And yeah, I mean, a pin spot light, like what are you getting out of it, right? I mean, so to do
the idea behind the pin spotlight was that you could read with it, but it didn't even work for that.
You got to keep moving your book around on that one pin spot. I'll come and we'll put lights in you. But so I'm a big fan of ambient lighting. I think that's why it's great. You can do ambient lighting. You know, it's nice when it's shrouded somehow, where it's got shades or something to cover it to kind of diffuse the lighting. So any kind of diffuse lighting is amazing. One of my concerns about the LED light, which you can't get away from too much, is it doesn't really give you the full range of light anymore. And there's some artificialness of it. So, I admit I like to put it in incandescent light sometimes, because it's almost like if you remember when you had the first time I listened to a record, it's like, wow, oh my God, like my ears were just tingling inside. And you went to 8-track tapes and cassettes, and now you're down to your iPod and you're down to your phones. They lost something in translation. And you don't get the same wavelength in there. And it's the same thing that happened to lighting. So when you walk into homes now, I'm just sensitive to it or aware, but a lot of these homes, they feel very flat. I don't know if you've noticed that when you see the LED lighting, because People are just thinking about what the lux level is. What's bright? I can see, I can read, hey, so solution, success. But there's something that can be a little off-putting about those lights. What they do is they're just putting essentially a bit of yellow, because all LED is the same. They say, well, they come a long way, really getting far.
Yeah, that's how they warm it up.
Yeah, but they just figured out how to make a better shade of yellow paint to stick over the bulb, the tip. That's about it. And so if you can still get, some of the incandescent bulbs, they use so little energy, by the way, to throw a couple of those in a room, a couple up lights really warms up a house. It's just the tip I'm recommending.
That uplighting is what I think would be great. And I've actually seen the new construction, sometimes it's in the floor, which is really cool. But, if you have an older house, or, you can't put it in the floor anymore.
It depends on the colors of your wall, too, and how much light it reflects back into the room, too.
Yeah.
Like I made a mistake of using too much color in parts of my house where it just sucks up light.
Well, that's the other interesting thing is the colors that you use. Colors have a big impact on what the lights look like, too. Hey, I'm just going to give a good tip for you if you're ever painting again.
I'm painting soon.
You're painting soon? All right, here's a good one. So if you're ever when you're doing your mock-up, never just do it on a flat wall. What you want to do is you do it on a corner. What most people don't realize is that paint actually reflects upon itself.
Two different shades almost.
It literally will reflect upon itself. So whatever the color is, it becomes magnified. So if you actually put it at a 45 and you do it, or in the corners, the light will bounce back and you'll actually see a better rendition of the true color. And then you don't realize, it's not what I wanted.
Okay, good.
Those tips and more when you read articles or watch Scott Harris on his many television offerings. I don't know where to even suggest people check you out because you seem like you're in so many places. Do you have like a central website where people can follow where you are?
Yeah, the name of the company is Building Construction Group, and our website is buildingcgroup.com. So it's building, C as in construction, group.com. My email is scott@buildingcgroup.com. And, I like doing these things because people reach out with questions all the time that it feels great to be able to help people because that's why we're doing this is to be able to evolve and bring and give a little bit of a rise to this industry.
Well, don't be shy then, everybody. You should hit Scott with an email.
Good questions, though.
With questions, exactly.
No stone floor.
No stalkers. There was a stalker, guys.
Well, of course. I mean, I'm sorry to hear that. It's no fun.
Don't stalk.
No stalking allowed.
Stalking bad. Scott Harris.
Thank you so much, Mark.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, J. Elvis.
My pleasure.
Bye-bye. Well, congratulations. You've made it through an entire jumbo-sized Thanksgiving meal-sized episode. If you're listening now way past Thanksgiving, you can just know that many people did ingest it during Thanksgiving week. You obviously have just discovered it. Oh, there's an email. Oh, there's another email. If you want to reach us by email, of course, it's edgewithmarkthompson@gmail.com. Until next time, thank you, and bye-bye.
If you enjoy listening to The Edge, support them by subscribing to The Edge on iTunes, Stitcher, and you can listen through the iHeartRadio app. Get busy listening.